Imagine the chapters written in the history books from the past 2 years. Just take a moment to let that soak in. Every one of us here is part of history. The world we live in now is markedly different to the world that we lived in 2020. The change was rapid, violent. It wasn't evolution, it was transformation. A sharp halt, then a reset, now a turning point. At the height of the crisis in New Zealand and Australia, the job markets were slashed by 30%. Share markets plummeted by the same amount. The digitisation of supply chains and currency hit hyper-acceleration. We turned on the nightly news to watch worldwide upheaval and chaos in the streets. We got our own taste of that with panic buying in the supermarkets. As we lived through the pandemonium, confusion, conspiracies, new questions were asked of politicians, policymakers and business leaders in an attempt to agitate positive change. Now, what do all of these economic, social and political disruptions have in common? Well, each one was created by a collective movement of individuals. At the centre of all change, there are people like you and I. After a decade of being a human resources professional, I know that every wide-scale change happens through the collective change at an individual level first. And right now you may be thinking, man, I hope he's learned more profound things than that across the past decade. Well, for the next 10 minutes, we will consider how the most important questions we can ask should not be put to our politicians or business leaders, but first to ourselves. This world transformation opens a pathway to self-discovery that means that you too can transform to effect positive change. Because the world has been significantly disrupted, but etched in our heads and our hearts are the significant personal impacts of time spent in lockdown as that social and political unrest swirled. So for a moment, take yourself there. Empty city streets. Gyms, bars and restaurants all closed, travel restricted. Access to your friends and family shut off. This inhibited freedom created isolation, loneliness and strained relationships. If you were lucky enough to continue to work or study through these times, chances are good that you're on the couch, hunched over your laptop, distracted by TikTok. For me, as the adrenaline from the crisis wore off, I began to feel pent up and disillusioned. I was alone, locked down in New Zealand on a work assignment. What am I doing here? And with my bogan Australian accent, introducing myself as Grant instead of Grant, I'm sure you Kiwis asked yourselves the same thing. What is he doing here? Well, at age 36, I once pictured myself married with 2 kids and a dog. But after the breakdown of a long-term relationship, I found myself single, in a 1-bedroom apartment, navigating dating apps, discovering the meaning of being left on red. And here you see my wonderful home study or work office across this time, otherwise known as my kitchen, a super professional environment. And whilst we're on the topic of all things professional, it was also during this time that I discovered that the next move for me, career-wise, was likely another international work assignment, this time in the US. And it was here that I made the difficult decision of leaving my fantastic employer of 11 years. And I backed the capability, the experience that I built across this time to go and find something new. Well, so began a journey of 50 job applications and 20 interviews before I landed the right role for me. And I distinctly remember one interview panel where they said to me, because I was in human resources, I should interview myself. Well, I did that, and I still didn't get the job. So I regularly had to remind myself that rejection is protection. And these difficult life circumstances, that inattention gives you opportunity to grow and expand. And in fact, if you never feel uncertain or confused, it means that you're walking a path that you've already walked before. Let me say that again. If you never feel uncertain or confused, it means that you are walking a path that you've already walked before. So I started to see this unease, this tension that I was experiencing as an opportunity to deepen my own self-awareness. There was a lot that I couldn't control, but I could always control myself. This loneliness that I was feeling, I wanted to find meaning in it. And I remember a colleague along the way once taught me that if I ever feel lost, confused, or put on the spot and didn't know the answer, I should ask another question. So I started in that one-bedroom apartment with the pen and a pad. I'd write myself a question at the top of the page and then scribble a response until I found a lesson. It was messy, but it was cathartic and it was kind of fun. And this became a weekly practice of self-discovery that led to new insight and direction. Now, you've likely already been told that taking time to pause and reflect is valuable. But it's also likely that you've deprioritised this practice. Life gets busy. Well, I'm here to give you a reminder and a recipe. You too need a pen and a pad, quiet space, ditch the phone, and a few minutes once a week for honest reflection. Now, this is a small investment, but the payback is you can become someone new. This practice will move you beyond surface level analysis and bring you improved clarity and direction. So I'll now share with you 3 questions to ask yourself. Write these down at the top of a page and then scribble your response until you find a lesson. And this will lead you to transformation. Question number 1. What are you leaving in the past? In order to make space for a new future, we need to let go of the things that no longer serve us. Richard Burkhardt, an organisational theorist, proposed a very simple model for how we process change. He suggested that we move from current state through transition to future state. Now, it's logical to think that the most difficult part will be moving from transition into future state. But studies show that letting go of current state, back at the start, is where the most pain lies. Letting go of what was and what is. Earlier, I talked about the social unrest that we're experiencing. Well, I'm a believer that our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And if you want to change that world, you need to start by changing yourself. So take some time to do a scan of your current state and the things that are holding you in the past. Where are you holding on to prejudices or limiting beliefs? Where are you blaming someone else for one of your problems? Where are you blaming yourself for a past mistake? Now, we all have these inner gremlins. Find and acknowledge them. And with your pen in hand, write until you find the lesson. That's what converts these imperfections into wisdom. And once you've converted them into wisdom, there's nothing more that you can or should do besides let them go. With compassion for yourself, release them, dissolve them. That's the old you. The new you doesn't need to carry them anymore. Back in that one-bedroom apartment, I had to let go of a career and a relationship that I had not planned to let go of. And in that messy process, I also found myself letting go of an insatiable need for perfection, both within myself and in other people. Now, as I journaled and wrote these lessons down, the pages that I wrote them on, I chose to burn as a symbolic way of letting go. I'm sure that my neighbours appreciated the plumes of smoke coming from the balcony. But once you do let go and create space, you are then ready for question number 2. What superpowers are you bringing with you into the future? As I mentioned, I am a reformed self-critic and perfectionist. In the past, I needed no practice in focusing on the areas that I wasn't good at, where I needed to improve, where I had gaps. But when I shifted that focus to putting as much time and emphasis into the areas that I was good at, and then I tried to use these to solve problems or deliver value, I hit a sweet spot. So now with your pen in hand, write and reflect on the areas that you are damn good at. What lights you up? What sets you on fire? Track where you find your flow. When time disappears, the activity's effortless and you feel good. Whatever's on that list of things that you're good at, you can then ask the why in order to get underneath it. Now, I have a friend who is fantastic at giving advice. Every time I go to her, I walk away clearer on the pathway that I want to take. When I ask myself why she's so good at giving advice, I realise it's for two very simple reasons. One, she's a great listener. She's always attentive and makes space for me. Two, she's a great communicator in the way that she relays back to me what she's heard. From this, I find my own pathway forward. Asking the why behind the activities that you are good at is powerful because this will give you clues to what your superpowers are. And you can then consciously increase the amount of time that you spend on those superpowers. Because in amongst another digital revolution, these authentic, humanistic gifts cannot be replaced by technology. Just remember, however, that outside of your friends and family, no one really cares about your superpowers until you use them to solve problems or deliver value. But once you do focus on your own superpowers and you get clear on those, I then encourage you to go ahead and get curious about other people's gifts. Bring awareness to them. And here on screen you see two ladies, both human resource business partners, and I had the privilege of working with them both when I was in New Zealand. And when I arrived from Australia, they told me that I had a reputation of being all over the detail. Now, I'm sure that this was their nice way of telling me that they thought that I was going to be a micromanager. But thankfully for them and me, by later in my career, I learnt the value in establishing a strong environment where other people's talents could shine, stand out, and be magnified. So after I set some broad context, I then got busy in learning their superpowers. And I did my best to support them and then get out the way. And of course, they were great and they did great things. So for you, know that when you bring awareness to somebody else's gifts, you may bring awareness to something that changes their life. And the cool thing here is, if you're giving your superpowers and helping others do the same, this will likely put you on your pathway to your unique contribution to this world. Thirdly, and finally, how can you expand your connection? So much has abruptly changed in this world, but there's a lot that hasn't and never will. In fact, this world reset has reminded us of what is truly important. The undying need for meaningful relationships, living in alignment with our values, and a reminder to be grateful for the health and freedom that we have when we have it. So no matter the push for pace and agility, no matter the disruption that we encounter, we should never forget the need for respect and connection. And as a small but symbolic example of this, stay with me as I share it. I have a daily practice of picking up one piece of rubbish each and every day. I know that every time I do this, I've had a small but tangible impact on a bigger environmental issue. And in the same way, in order to ease some of society's tensions, it doesn't necessarily have to be a protest. It could be as simple as giving a smile to a stranger, being courteous to a shop attendant, remembering to give someone a compliment each and every day. These are small but powerful actions that make the world better one moment at a time. Earlier, I mentioned the loneliness, the uncertainty that I'd experienced, and my desire to find meaning in it. Well, I'm proud to say that I did just that. As a left-brain, hardline, analytical thinker, this experience humbled me to find new depths of empathy for others. Made me a better listener, made me more curious. It moved me from my head into my heart. And I had to go through this experience in order to find a wider perspective. Because when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Viktor Frankl reminded us of this. No matter your stage in life, there'll be times that are difficult, messy, annoying, boring. You will make plenty of mistakes. But you should back your potential to find a way through whatever comes your way. And I mentioned earlier that nobody cares about your superpowers to use them to solve problems. Well, no one cares about your problems until you take responsibility for them. If you ever feel disillusioned or dissatisfied with your career, money, external surroundings, relationships, I invite you to ask questions of yourself first. What new choices do you need to make? What more do you need to learn? How can you expand your connection? Because I have learned that inner resistance will never move a situation. Taking responsibility and building your self-awareness will. So if you take the time to reflect on these 3 questions, imagine the potential you unlock in yourself and therefore what you bring to the world. By letting go of what doesn't serve you, you are treating yourself with compassion. You'll treat others with more compassion. By finding and giving your superpowers, you are giving your best self. You'll be better placed to help others do the same. And by always remembering the value of connection, you'll make a difference that you are proud of. Because if each of us here chooses to explore what lies within first, collectively, we'll then influence the world with a vibrant new perspective.